Alright, so as usual, another episode of The Strain is out, so let's talk about it. We're continuing our adventures on The Strain, and on this one we really got a lot of the juicy information. Right now, F is doing an autopsy on the body of one of the survivors of the plane crash before. So now we've clearly seen the anatomy of the vampire. They are very much trying to establish now that this is a vampire, and you're seeing kind of how they work, how these little worms essentially infect us and repurpose our bodies and change our organs, and that scene was really disturbing. It was really hard to look at, I'm not gonna lie. That was probably one of the more difficult things that I've had to endure in this show, let alone in television. It was well done, and I loved the way they did it because they were discovering it for the first time, and you can really see that is wearing on Nora. She definitely is starting to feel the weathering of this operation, and we finally learn that Sam, Frodo's wonderful companion, took the money and ran type of a scenario. And F didn't handle that very well. No. He took the very mature, high road of this route and decked him in the face. And I loved that scene because you actually see both sides of the spectrum, because Nora does sit there and tell F, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. And would I do that for somebody that I love? Would I be willing to hurt all of these people for someone I love? You really get interesting characters like that in this one. And also, one of my favorite parts in the book happened in this one. That scene in the shed. That shed in the backyard, and then the wife of one of the survivors, finds the dead dog, and the husband's turning into the vampire, and he's like, no, you can't be around me, what I'm turning into, because the voices in my head are telling me to eat you, kind of thing. And that whole where the guy who hated the dog came over, and you're just like, oh, do it, and she puts him in there, and the scene was shot so perfectly how they don't cut inside to the vampire. You just see her throw him in there, she turns around, you see her almost like saying a prayer, and then you just hear some noises and blood seeps from under the shed. The blood really stood out, and I just loved that so much. In other words, this is a fantastic episode that gives you a lot more of the people story and kind of an insight into the world in more depth in terms of the main story of what's going to happen. But, this is where things start to hit the fan, because finally we get to see some Satrakian awesomeness, where he runs in with his sword and he's mumbling his stuff, which, if you've read the books, it's basically my sword swings of silver, and just runs over because F is like, we have to find the other people, so let's start with the little girl. He finds the little girl, and he's like, hey, are you okay? And the girl turns around, and you're like, you're clearly not okay! Run! Grab machine guns and bazookas! And be like that one guy in Washington State who lit his whole house on fire because he saw a spider. And Satrakian runs in and, not even joking, just swipe in front of Nora and F and just swipes the head off of the girl. And basically just says, don't let any of the worms get on you, and get out of the way. And then they turn around, the camera just shows them, and there's one of the vampires, it's the dad. And then the dad starts coming at them, and Satrakian just pretty much with ease, just boom. Oh, it was cool, it was well shot, there wasn't a lot of shaky cam, so you could see the action, and oh man, that was cool. This is probably the chapter they've taken the most creative liberties on, because of the fact that, for those of you who read the book, we haven't encountered the naked fat guy running down the street yet, which means the other guy didn't go to jail to meet with Satrakian. So you can kind of see where this deviation is cascading into more. And I don't mind it, it's just there's so many times where I want the other guy to know. And it just is jarring, but I don't mind it. There's certain creative liberties. It's not like Aragon, where Aragorn's fighting a smoke dog or whatever that thing was in that movie. The movie was horrible. But it's just enough that they clearly are changing it for a television show format, and that's I gotta say it's pretty good that way. But one thing I do find really interesting about this episode is when Nora and F are discussing upstairs after that whole event happened, and F is like, we need to hunt them down and kill them, just like how Satrakian said. And Nora is like, no, that's killing innocent people. And F just basically corrects her and says, no, that's just a shell that's been repurposed by a virus. They are not who they were anymore. That little girl died. And I do really like that. And then she points out that we are, like, this isn't what we've done before. And he says, now that we're actually doing something important, we can't back out now. And I love this conversation that goes on, because it goes on and off like this, where it's like, it just shows how much F's work is consuming him, because he's already a workaholic. And now that the world is in his hands, you just see much more gravitas with him, and it's almost like his work is consuming him more. So while these humans are being consumed, F is being consumed by the work. And Nora, she wants nothing of it. She's like, I just want to back out. I'm done. And Satrakian said it, not everyone is just mentally cut out for this. She talked about how in this conversation that it's not like the avian flu that they dealt with, and it's not like any of the other things that they've done, and she doesn't see it as a virus. She sees it as these people, and that's her biggest problem. And I just love that. It's just, they had a lot more depth to how because the best example I can give is The Walking Dead, where they have the chained up zombie, where he's like, oh, that's my son in the barn, and the zombie's chained up because he's my son, and stuff. But no, I feel like this went into it on a more intimate level, because it was talked about, I felt, in better detail. And that was ultimately her talking about how she can't do it because of the fact that to her they're people, and F just looks at them as a scientific survey, like an anomaly, and that they are not alive anymore. And he said, you saw what happened, and you know that these are not people anymore. And just especially that he says that his work is now important, that none of it mattered before. It just shows how much it's consuming him, because now apparently none of the other work he's done matters to him except for this one. And I really think that sort of intimacy about this subject was very, very interesting, and I felt it was an excellent conclusion to this episode. Okay, so what did you guys think of this episode? And don't forget to like and subscribe, as always, because I'm going to keep these videos coming to you all season long. And yeah, basically just discuss it with me. I'd love to hear about it. So what was your favorite part of The Strain this week? And so what do you think it's going? Just for a teaser, I saw in the teaser for on the next on The Strain, I saw an image that I'm hoping is in the next episode, and it's honestly one of my favorite scenes in the whole first book. So I'm hoping it's there, and I'll discuss it with you next week if it's there. So until next time, see you later.